Hi, and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. We are continuing in the magic circle. I dropped something. By Katherine and Neville. And in our last video, Ariel was going to hide the manuscripts in a cave, and she's skiing, and it describes all her skiing, and up behind her skis Wolfgang Hauser. And they have this skiing thing and conversation and a little bit of flirting going on. And then he finally says, "Hey, your Uncle Lapp hired me to protect you." Oh, that's where that all left off. So let's see what happens next. This wrench in the works had altered my freshly formed plans. I tried to think up some excuse that, due to my grief or whatever, I wanted to be alone so I could have some time to think. But now that Wolfgang and I had been so chummy over Glühwein, now that he disclosed his acquaintance with the black sheep branch of my family and had hinted at his burning passion for me, and also, I'd noticed, had an eye on my backpack more than once, I felt it might seem too obvious a ploy. And although he had never actually asked me what I was doing up here, I understood that my only option was to play for time, ski down the rest of the mountain, and worry about where to stash the manuscript while I drove back alone. By the time we'd suited up and snapped into our bindings, Wolfgang had recovered enough of his former charm and self-control to suggest that this time I follow him down the mountain. As good skiers learn early, if you can pattern your own form, the rhythmic combination of weight shifting and pole planting, after that of a superior skier, it will be worth more than 10,000 lessons with some instructor yelling in a foreign tongue, "Bend the knees, stop dragging the poles." I was delighted to get this education, at least, until he cut into the powder. He dropped from the side of the groomed slope and slashed down through a groove of aspen thick with snow, slaloming in and out among the trees. It took a moment before I realized he was headed for a big bowl of sugary powder of a quality that drew tourists by the thousands each year. It was at the far end of these woods, but in all the years I'd frequented this mountain, I myself had avoided it like the plague. Powder skiing requires a completely different approach from basic Nordic or Alpine techniques. You lean back on your haunches as if in a rocking chair, which forces your ski tips high above the snow so they don't bog down and stop you dead in your tracks. This takes enormous flexibility of the knees and strength in the thighs. If your tips get buried, if you stop, if you catch an edge and fall, you start sinking. Because I'd never found that special rhythm, I felt completely helpless in the powder. But now I also had a heavy backpack, adding awkward weight, which explains why I balked in the aspen grove, why I swerved instead to thread my way back to the groomed slope I'd just left. And that was when it happened. I had reached the edge of the wood when I knew something was wrong. I felt it coming above me long before I could hear it. There was no sound, but perhaps like a whisper, the earth breathing a long, shuddering sigh. I think the palms of my hands tingled with pinpricks inside the warmth of my gloves, sensed it before my conscious brain did. The moment I understood what was happening, I also understood I had no idea what to do. The ground was moving under my feet, not the ground itself, but rather the snow. The mountain was shedding its skin, ripping away in one brutal slash that 5-foot deep blanket, an accumulation of leaden snow that had taken all winter to fall. I was in an avalanche. And then the noise began. First, a rumble, then quickly a roar as snow started churning over itself and pebbles and rocks started spinning down the mountain around me. I was speeding just along the forest hem as fast as I could safely go without falling, but unsure whether to duck into the woods and risk a tree falling on me or to take my chances here with this mountain of heavy snow moving down like a load of cement. My mouth was dry from terror and my hands were growing numb. I prayed I wouldn't black out. Then I thought maybe I should, so that when I went under, the angry onslaught would be painless. I was moving, but I knew the snow was moving faster. To my left, out on the open slope, it was tossing big rocks in the air like children's beach balls. At my right, from the corner of my eye, I saw trees going down, their roots flung toward the sky. The avalanche was a living, breathing thing, devouring whatever fell into its maw, like the beast of the Snake River. I couldn't outrun it. I was no downhill racer, and better skiers than I had tried to beat avalanches in the past with small success. There wasn't a thing in my bag of tricks that would save my ASS. And I still had this bloody backpack on my back. Just at that thought, two things flashed into my mind. The first, knowing the mountain as I did, was that I was about to run out of woods on my right-hand side. Woods that separated me from the powder bowl just at the base of the slope where the bowl emptied out. The second was, what had become of that bowl? And since powder moved quicker than packed snow towards uncontrollable avalanches, what had happened to Wolfgang Hauser? These two questions were answered together. Beneath, I could see the spot where the snow met in a cauldron of violence, where the groomed slope to my left and the powder bowl to my right unloaded masses of snow, rock, and debris. At their impact point, a funnel of snow was flung into the sky. My legs were shrieking with pain from the strain of my flight, every sinew screaming to stop and rest. But I knew that to stop now meant certain death. Then, in a blur to my right, I saw a black form cutting through the trees. Timber was being ripped from the ground as the snow hurtled down without respite, but still he came. Ariel, he screamed above the crashing roar around us all. Leap, you must jump. I scanned frantically, trying to see what he meant, and then I knew. Just below, where the line of forest ended, was the lip of a crevice that jutted into the air like a ski jump. I couldn't see over the top, but I already knew what was beyond it. Many times in the past, I'd gone off that edge, letting my ski tips tilt over the lip so I slid like a teardrop down the sheer cliff face and into the chasm. Then I would slalom through the forest of rock, littering the floor of the gorge. But at that speed that I was now moving, I couldn't slow down at the edge of the gorge to drop safely over the side. If I did try to slow down, I'd be crushed by moving snow. I either had to bypass the gorge altogether, taking my chances on the open slope, which were now practically nil with the avalanche closing on me, or take the jump, as Wolfgang had told me to, and pray I land upright on my skis more than 100 feet below and on snow instead of hard, sharp rock. Whew. I had no time to think, only to act. I yanked off the wrist straps, dropping my ski poles in my wake so I wouldn't get skewered by one of them when I hit bottom. Then I shed the parka tied around my waist for the mobility I'd need to get enough loft. I knew I couldn't unbuckle the damn backpack in time to make the jump, so it had to come with me, the flying hunchback of Notre Dame. I crouched into my boots to increase speed and control. As I shot off the cliff, I lifted my body, stretching out full length into the wind with my arms pinned back and my chin thrust forward so I could completely clear the cliff and make a clean landing. My skis were resting on bottomless space. I was hurtling in the gorge, falling. It was free fall, and I knew I had to concentrate and not panic. I struggled to keep my tips high and together for the landing as snow and rubble flew from the cliff, tossing like a sea of confetti around me. I fell and fell. As the ground loomed toward me, I saw how truly narrow was the ribbon of snow beneath, how many and massive were the rocks. And again, I thought of the serpentine beast and the open jaws of death. After what seemed the eternity of a bad dream, my skis struck snow, and simultaneously my arms smashed into a rock. The jagged edges ripped through the sleeve of my silver moon suit like a serrated knife. I felt the slash of flesh parting, ripped from elbow to shoulder. The impact knocked me sharply sideways, off balance. Though there was no pain yet, I felt a sickening throb as the warm, wet blood soaked into my sleeve. The forest of rugged rock flashed by me in a blur. I struggled frantically to stay on my feet, but I was moving too fast without poles for balance. I caught an edge and spun out, whirling sideways and then flipping head over heels. I was somersaulting out of control, my skis striking rocks, knocking the binding locks open. But to my surprise, more than once, when I smashed into a boulder, the thickness of the backpack actually protected me. My shoulders and shins weren't so lucky. They were smashed into rock after rock. I felt the deep bruises blossoming as I tried to protect my head with my ragged and bloody arm. One loose ski flipped up and whacked me on the forehead. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but I've had that happen. Blood splashed into my eye. In the end, I was hurled up against a megalith, and I came to a stop, but not to a rest. I was battered and bleeding. The pain was starting to throb, but the pounding roar above me told me I had no time for a tune-up just now. Snow and debris were flying into the gorge from up the mountain. The air was so dense with rubble, it darkened the sky. Whole trees, roots and all, were hurtling into space above me. My jump had given me enough of a head start downhill that I did have a chance to beat it, but only if I kept moving. I struggled to get up and set my skis, still dragging from my ankles by their loose safety thongs. Besides my feet, as fast as possible. I snapped into my step locks and started to skate off down the couloir of ice and snow, threading swiftly between the rocks, just as Wolfgang Hauser caught up with me, breathing hard. "Christ, Ariel, you're a mess," he said between gasps. "I'm alive and nothing's broken," I told him as we raced side by side to avoid coming onslaught that was drowning our voices. "How about you?" "I'm fine," he yelled back, "but thank God you jumped. The entire bowl collapsed. Once you ran out of the woods, you'd have been trapped between two avalanches with nothing to stop them." "Holy S-word," I said, glancing at Wolfgang. He laughed and shook his head. "My sentiments precisely." At the far end of the gorge was another sheer cliff rising above us, but a curved ramp of snow-covered rock led to it, which we herringbone stepped our way up on our skis. Halfway up this ramp, Wolfgang stopped and looked back towards the edge of the gorge we'd just come from. As I came up, he laid his gloved hand on my shoulder in silence and nodded in that direction. I was already a little giddy from the loss of blood, but when I followed his gaze, I felt my stomach heave. I hunkered down and wrapped my arms around the ankles of my boots. The entire valley had disappeared. The sea of black stones we'd just ribboned through had completely vanished. What had bin, a gorge, was now stuffed nearly to the brim with dirty white rubble, roots and branches sticking up, clawing the sky. The only landmark left was that lip of cliff we'd jumped from, protruding less than 6 feet above what was now the valley floor. I felt Wolfgang's hand stroking my hair as I quivered in horror. We watched a last dusting of snow sift from the cliff and saw the raw, dark earth of the open slope beyond, raped of its white cover where a few pebbles still tumbled down the hill. Blah, blah. It was total devastation, all in less than 10 minutes. I started to cry. Wolfgang pulled me to my feet without speaking and put his arms around me, stroking me until my sobs subsided. Then, pulling me away, he wiped the blood and tears from my face with his glove and brushed my forehead with his lips as if healing a frightened child. "We better get you cleaned up and mended. You're a valuable creature," he told me with a gentle smile. But the next words of the beautiful Dr. Hauser, though just as tender and solicitous, terrified me. "And more than valuable," he said. "You're quite amazing, my dear, to outski an avalanche without once losing hold of that manuscript in your backpack." When I looked at him in genuine horror, he added, "Oh, I don't have to see it to know what it is. I followed you to the mountain to be certain you wouldn't hide it or lose it. If that's the rune manuscript you have there, as I believe it is, then it belongs to me. I sent it to you myself." Oh, and that's the end of this section. Huh. I thought Sam sent it to her. Interesting. All right. Hey. Hey. Sorry, my cat is scratching something she's not supposed to scratch. Okay. I do want to remind you, because it's been a while and we are about a quarter of the way through the book, and I lost my little, that's what I dropped when I dropped something at the beginning of the video. Please click the subscribe, there's a you there, button. So if you've been enjoying the videos and you don't want to miss anything when the next one comes out, you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You push the bell tab and you will get notifications every time a new video pops up. All right, you guys, that was a busy, interesting, well-described section of that book. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you. Be safe out there too. Next time. Bye.